So good morning and welcome to Revesby Uniting Church online. We've relocated this morning to a park just a few kilometres from the church with this lovely path along the side of us. We're going to start our service this morning in the usual way with an acknowledgement of country. And we'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Darug Nation, who are the original custodians of this land on which we are standing this morning. And we'd like to pay respects to elders, both past and present, of the Bidjigal people, and extend that respect to all other Aboriginal people who might be listening to our service this morning. So I've already welcomed you this morning, but we have a couple of announcements to mention. The first is that Michael has been away on study leave last week and this week, but he'll be back in the driving seat next Sunday for the service. We have our kids play videos that we're uploading, a full kids play session on Wednesdays, and lots of other kids play videos of songs and stories and craft throughout the week. They're posted on Facebook, so if you just look up Kids Play Revesby Uniting in Facebook, you'll find that if you've got little ones, 0 to 5, and they'll love the activities that we're posting. If you're interested in an adult Bible study, we're running them via Zoom Thursdays 7:30. Now, if you're interested in those, send an email to info@revesbyuniting.org and we will send you the details of that. We run it via Zoom. So if you're good with that, send us an email, we'll send you the link. If you have no idea about Zoom, then also send us an email and we'll send you the details about how to get Zoom installed and get connected to the meeting. Creator God, we stand in the midst of your creation this morning. The spinifex and the grass, here today and gone tomorrow. The earth and the rocks that stand testament to your creation for millennia. The flowers of the field giving beauty and colour to the world. The glory of the ever-changing sky, the sun, the clouds, the stars at night. And the wonder of life in all its complexity and wonder. We give thanks. Amen.
A reading from Luke 24, verses 13 to 35. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place here in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all people, and how the chief priests and the leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at a tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who had said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him. Then they said to him, "Oh, how foolish you are! and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread.
You may have heard the term Eureka, an exclamation of a discovery or new knowledge or an insight. Well, there's a lovely story that hails back to ancient Greece, to the philosopher, scientist, astronomer, deep thinker Archimedes. And it's a lovely story. And it starts with Archimedes in the bathroom, because as we all know, the bathroom is where we all do our deepest thinking. And Archimedes was getting in the bath. And the more he got in the bath, the higher the water rose in the bath. And Archimedes thought about that and realised that the water was rising in relation to the volume, his legs and his body, that were getting in the water. Now that seems obvious to us today, but to Archimedes, this was a revelation. You see, the Greeks had a mathematical problem. They could measure the volume of regular objects like cubes and spheres and triangular pyramids. But when it came to irregular objects like the human body, for example, they had no way that they could measure the volume of that sort of shape. Archimedes realised that simply by measuring the rise in the water in the bath, he could get that water and measure it in a regular object, and he would know the exact volume of anything that he put in the bath. And this was an amazing discovery. And Archimedes knew it was amazing. He was so excited that the legend goes, we don't know whether this is true or not, but it's a great story, that he leapt out of the bath and ran down the street screaming, "Eureka! I have found it!" We can relate that story to the Bible reading this morning of the two travellers on the road to Emmaus. They had a moment of inspiration, a moment of discovery, a moment of new insight when they realised that the person that they were talking about, the person that was discussing with them, the person that broke bread with them and drank wine with them, was the risen Christ. And that was an amazing moment for them. Mark records this story very simply, in 2 verses in fact. After this, he appeared in another form to 2 of them, as they were walking into the country. And they went back and told the rest, but they did not believe them. So from those 2 verses, Luke has crafted an extraordinary and powerful story. Really up with some of the most powerful stories that you'll read in the Gospels. It's been used, this story has been used as a guide for preachers. Identify the audience's need. Preach with knowledge and insight. create an opportunity for the people to experience the risen Christ, and then encourage them to go out and share that with others. It's also been the inspiration for a movement called the Emmaus Walk, where people go away for a weekend of deep Christian fellowship and insight and inspiration. It very importantly makes the argument that you and I are not second-hand Christians. Without this idea of an experience of the risen Christ, every person that didn't know Jesus personally is sort of a second-hand Christian just listening to stories. But through this Emmaus story, we are invited directly into having an experience of Christ, and it makes us first-hand Christians, not second-hand, hand-me-down Christians. And it also allows us to ground our own experiences of wonder and inspiration. It allows us to ground them in the Christian life. And we've all had Emmaus experiences, some grand and huge, some very small and intimate. That's one reason why we remain as people of faith and linked to a faith community, because we can recall those Emmaus-like experiences in our life. Some of those stories are small and intimate and personal, and some of them are catalysts for us changing our lives. So hi Yvonne.
Hi Ian.
Yvonne is obviously, she's a member of our church, she's an elder, and she's a member of a church council, and most importantly, Yvonne, of course, you run Kids Play.
Yes.
The most important role that we do. But before you were at Revesby, I understand you were at Cogra Uniting.
That's correct. I was at Cogra Uniting Church for a number of years, and I was just a member of the church many years ago, and not part of the leadership at that stage.
I understand that you went through a difficult time back then with some young kids.
Yes, this was going back about 28 years ago. It's a long time. Yes, I had just been through a marriage breakdown, and it was a difficult time in my life, and I was going through a period of grief and pain and loss, and with two young children to raise.
How old were they at the time?
One was 9 and the eldest was 13.
So yeah, difficult times with impressionable kids.
It is a difficult time of their lives.
Yeah. And you were thinking of packing up sticks and moving.
Yes, so I had to make some decisions because obviously the path that I thought I was on was no longer viable, and I need to change course and make some decisions. So I decided that I would go interstate because it was more viable for me financially, and I was thinking of the ACT because I have family there and I would have support.
Obviously with young kids that would be important.
Absolutely.
But you didn't go.
No, I didn't. And that was because while I was thinking through all of these and thinking about what I would do, and thinking about, putting together an application to look at for a job there, I had a niggling feeling and a doubt about whether this was the right decision for me. And as I thought more about it, and it didn't go away, it got worse, that niggling feeling that this was not the right decision to make at this time.
Just that sort of uncomfortable kind of, this is right but it's not right feeling in the back of your head.
That's correct. That would describe it well.
Yeah. That lasted a while. That wasn't a couple of glasses of wine and it went away. That lasted quite a while.
No, it lasted quite a while, to the point where I thought, I need to think seriously about it. I mean, I'm a person of faith, and I always believe that God is with me, and I thought I should pray really earnestly about this, because I need to get this right. And so that's what I did. I just sought some guidance, but the thought wouldn't go away. It got stronger and stronger.
And then this must have a good ending, because you're not in the ACT. You stayed at Kogarah. So something eventuated that sorted out your financial needs, and tell us about that.
Yeah. What happened was, as I thought and prayed about it, and the thought got stronger, I prayed about what I should do, and thought more about that, and it was almost like a thought in my head, or a voice in my head, I don't know how you can explain that said, there's work for me to do here still, and the work that I was to do was connected with my church, the Kogarah Uniting Church, at that time.
But you didn't go to Canberra. You stayed in Sydney.
No, that's right, I didn't go. It was because as I was making my plans and thinking about that, I had some niggling thoughts at the back of my mind that this was not the right decision for me to make. And as I thought more and more about it, that thought or those feelings became stronger. And you know, when you have doubts, it's hard to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So I decided that I needed to pray for some guidance about this. I've always had a faith, and I knew that, you know, God was with me. But I felt at this time I needed to just be sure that I was making the right decision, and just to ask God for guidance. And as I did that, the thought became stronger, and the thought in my mind sort of weirdly started to move towards Kogarah Uniting Church. And it seemed like there was something that I needed to do there. And it was really strange, and I did not know what to make of that. And so I decided that the best thing for me to do would be to talk to the minister about it. Let me just explain a little bit about the Kogarah Uniting Church at this point in time. We had just moved from the premises that we had down the road. It was sold to the St. George Hospital, and we had bought premises, or the church had bought premises up the road. It was an old factory. And the vision of the minister and the leadership and the congregation at the time was that they wanted to be a church for the community, as a church where the community could come.
It's quite a leap, isn't it? I mean, that's a huge change.
Yes.
Sell up and move without a clear road ahead, if you like. But
that's
yeah,
right.
Wonderful.
That was the vision.
Yeah.
And so they bought this old factory and refurbished it to be purpose-built. So there was a space for a worship, for the congregation to meet on a Sunday morning, and there was a hall, and there were meeting rooms. So that was the building at the time that we'd moved into. And so I decided to, as I said, to talk to the minister. So I met with him, and I told him about these thoughts that were in my mind, and the feeling that I had that I shouldn't move, and that what I had to do was something in connection with Kogarah Uniting Church. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know at the time, but he then said to me, "Oh, you should talk to Russell."
Russell. Whenever I'm in doubt, I always seek a Russell to talk to.
And Russell was a businessman in our church and a leader and on the church council. And he had decided that he would, from his business, fund a position for someone to actually be an administrator type person and manage this new centre. And
meanwhile, of course, you've done a master's in business management and in the not-for-profit sector, and I've recently read your PhD on operating for community-based organisations. So you came in with a vast amount of knowledge.
Ian, yes, I was a school teacher, knew nothing about how to run an organisation at all. But I knew about teaching kids, and I could listen, and I had empathy and all that sort of thing you need as a school teacher. And so I said to the minister, look, this is a very important decision in my life, so I need to be absolutely sure that it's the right thing. And it's...
You've got 2 small kids to look after.
That's right, and that it's I guess what you might call a godly decision, something that I was being led into.
And not the least of it's a life-changing decision.
Absolutely, very life-changing.
A whole direction change, yeah.
So I said to the minister, look, I think I won't talk to Russell. I think I'll just wait and see if Russell would talk to me. And I would appreciate it if you didn't talk to Russell either. So we ended on that note, and I went back home to think more about it and to be more prayerful about it and just wait to see what happened. And what happened was, in a few weeks after that, was that after worship one Sunday morning, Russell said to me, Yvonne, I'd like to just talk to you about something.
Always dangerous. It's always dangerous when someone buttonholes you and says, oh, I'd just like to have a little word about something.
Yes. So I said, I kind of now knew what it was about because the minister had told me what they had in mind. So he proceeded to explain to me, that they needed someone to manage this building, and I knew what the purpose of it was, and that they needed to have someone on site. And that he was going to fund that position, and he thought that I might be a suitable person to take that on. So I said to him, okay. and then I proceeded to tell him...
2 little letters. Okay.
Right. And I proceeded to tell him about what was happening in my life and the thoughts that I was having, and I told him about talking to the minister, who was the Reverend Ken Day at the time. And to say the very least, Russell was gobsmacked. And so that was the chapter of a new beginning for me, a new direction, a new road, if you like, to walk on.
A new road. The Emmaus story doesn't actually just end there with, like Yvonne's story, with the travellers having that endorphin-filled rush of wonder and mystery. They turned around from their journey and they headed back to Jerusalem to tell their friends. And I think that was a very costly decision. When you read through from the Gospels into the stories of the early church, the early Christians had a very difficult time. That mountaintop experience, that Emmaus moment that they had, needed to sustain them through very difficult times. And as it was then, so it is also now. We all have those wonderful Emmaus, life-changing, inspirational moments in our life when we feel $1 million, the endorphins are pumping and we feel fabulous. But then we wake up the next morning and we have that question: are we going to turn around and head back to Jerusalem? Are we going to start to face the difficulties, the challenges that inspirational idea, that motivating vision had for us? Are we going to start to live that Emmaus moment into the future? That's the tough part. As Christians, we all want those great, exciting Emmaus moments, but we're not always so keen on the self-sacrifice, on the difficulties, on the hard times, on the doing what must be done day, by week, by month, by year, by decade. That's where we need to rely on our Emmaus experiences to carry us through. So you've made this great decision. Day one. What do you do?
Yes, I had an office, and I was in the office on day one, and yeah, what do I do? I'm here to enact the church's vision.
Oh, well, that's a clear and simple thing to do. The church, what are you doing? I'm doing the church's vision. How simple could that be?
Yes, Alcoholics Anonymous was already using the building, so, you know, there were rents to collect. And I did church office type things that you would do, you know, helping the minister, you know, helping with the news sheet, things like that. But then people started to just wander into the office. People with needs, people who needed food, people who were homeless, people who were struggling with addictions, people who just needed help of some kind. And yeah, that's where the hard slog started. What do I do? These people need help. How do I help them? And that was the beginnings of the Kogarah Storehouse, what is now known as the Kogarah Storehouse.
So the need kind of grew organically, if you like.
Absolutely, it grew organically.
And that required the vision of the church to kind of grow organically with it.
That's absolutely correct. And so the congregations donated food, and we started to give people food. But then I accessed government funding to help with financial assistance of people who were struggling. We were able to access funding to help people with bills, with their electricity bills and their telephone bills. Yeah, and just help with, you know, talking to people and helping them just talk through their difficulties, and working with other NGOs in the area. So providing youth, you know, there were other NGOs that provided youth services. There was Centrelink. There was the women's housing sector. There was an organisation called Backstop that helped people with counselling and helped families. So you know, there was a lot of networking that happened with other local organisations, and that's how the Kogarah Storehouse grew.
And
to what it is today.
Yeah, along with that, an incredible growing of your skill set as well. As you mentioned, you came into this vision with a teacher's qualification, but you needed to learn networking, you needed to learn grant funding applications, you needed to learn speaking and helping and reaching out to alcoholics and homeless and needy and hungry, and this huge, I imagine, learning curve that took place.
Absolutely, it was a very steep learning curve, and I had to learn quickly and I had to learn fast. But you know, it's amazing how you acquire the skills that you need. You learn what you need to know, and you know, you attend meetings in the area with other organisations and learn about what they are doing, and it just empowers you to, you know, run your own ministry. So,
well, the whole reason that we're here today is because we're not down at Revesby Church worshipping with our Christian community. We're having to run services via video, and as difficult as that is, it must be tenfold more difficult for an organisation like the Storehouse, and it's very hands-on support for the local community. So how is the storehouse maintaining its vision and its work throughout these difficult times?
Yes, the storehouse is doing incredibly well, helping people at this time. It has grown exponentially. It's under the new manager. Has all the skills that I didn't have. She worked in a welfare organisation before and is able to just put into place so much more than I could ever have. And so, you know, I guess the 16 years of my working there was just set the foundation.
16 years.
16 years. And it set the foundation, and she's just been able to build on that tremendously. So in the last 2 weeks with COVID-19 happening and so many people needing so much help, the storehouse has been able to give out food parcels and still help people financially and help them with their bills. Of course, practicing all the safe work practices we need to at this time. But and from my understanding, they have already given out quite a few hundred food parcels over the last few weeks to so many people. And it's just wonderful to see that the storehouse can still do that and is so relevant, especially today and in this time that we find ourselves in.
In this time of need, yeah. And just to conclude, you haven't really walked away from it, have you? You're still on the board.
No, that's right. I'm on the management committee and help there with other people who have various skills, and I volunteer at the storehouse still because I just love being with the people.
Wonderful.
And it brings me great joy.
You know, the Emmaus story reminds us that we're not so much individuals as we are a community. The travellers turned round and headed back to tell their community. That was the important part of the story for them, going back and telling the people. And I think we're only just starting to learn that as a people ourselves in these difficult times of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're finding that we are much less individuals and much more a community. And so what we do as individuals in keeping ourselves isolated, in staying at home, in hand washing, in keeping our distance from others, that's the way that we keep others safe, that we keep the community safe. And we're starting to think a little bit more in those ideas rather than the ideas of the individual. Certainly in the first century, this idea of the community was paramount. They didn't think in terms of a person. The most important thing for those people was their family, their community, their village. That was the important part of life for those people. And so for them, the Emmaus story was about sharing that story with those around them. So when you think back on your Emmaus experiences, I'd ask you, how have you been able to leverage off that story to tell others about it, to share it with the local community, to share it with your community of faith? Because that's the way that a community of faith grows and changes. We can have all the council and congregational meetings we want, and we can have all the voting that we want. But what really makes a community change and grow and remain relevant is when that community listens to others, when that community shares its experiences, when that community opens itself to growth. That's the real message and the real challenge of the Emmaus walk.
Loving God, remind us that the risen Christ is with us each day of life's journey, just as he was with those disciples on the road to Emmaus. We so often struggle to recognize you. Open our eyes, we pray, that we may see you. This is a difficult road the world is walking at present. We seek your wisdom in the midst of the questions we have about the circumstances we find ourselves in, so much of it beyond our control. There is much we don't know about coronavirus, and so much yet to learn. We are grateful for the scientific minds and expertise that are regularly making new discoveries. Give to the leaders of all nations, we pray, the wisdom and foresight to invest in long-term solutions that will help prepare for or prevent future outbreaks. Be close to us, as the necessity of social distancing keeps us apart from loved ones and friends. We pray for those in our community who are going through a time of suffering and pain. Help us to always be aware of one another's needs and to respond accordingly and assist them with words and deeds on the road of recovery. On this Mother's Day, we give thanks for all mothers, for their words of wisdom, and for the ways they have nurtured and cared for us. We honor today those who have been mothers to us in nurturing our faith. Help us to follow the example of love they have shown. We ask, loving God, that you open our eyes to your work of transformation in and around us as we walk with you day by day. May your new life be made manifest in what we say to others. Give us the graciousness to make all our conversations holy, just as we desire that our speaking be holy. May our seeing be holy as well. We are bombarded with images every day that shape our attitudes and behaviors. As you opened the scriptures to the disciples and taught them everything, open our eyes to see you in the beauty of nature, in the creative arts we see on our screens, in the beauty of another human being, and enable us to see you as a constant companion and friend. Amen.
So, may you open yourself to Emmaus experiences, allowing them to mould and change you. And may you also share your experiences with the faith community in which you find yourself, allowing those experiences to not only change and shape you, but change and shape the community of faith in which you find yourselves. Amen.